Spinge verso l'area, Magat, Rummenigge ancora, rete. Un bel gol di Rummenigge.
They said he had it all: speed, elegance, a deadly finish, and the kind of presence that made defenders hesitate before they even moved. In the golden era of European football, when heroes were sculpted in fire and finals were fought like wars, Karl-Heinz Rummenigge stood at the very edge of immortality. Twice, he came within inches of the throne, and twice, it was pulled from beneath his feet. He was the beating heart of West Germany, the face of Bayern Munich, the Ballon d'Or winner who made strikers look like dancers and goals look like poetry. But when history called champions to the stage, his name was whispered and then left out of the spotlight. How do you explain a man who won almost everything, yet is remembered with a hint of sadness? Why does his name live in footnotes, while others with less grace and fewer goals are carved in gold? Behind a polished smile and model-like poise, there was something else: fatigue. Not of the body, but of the soul. He carried the burden of almost, the heartbreak of finals lost, the pressure of a nation that always expected him to lead, even when his legs could barely keep up. There are rumors that in the 1982 World Cup final, he played through injury, needles in his thighs, pain in his eyes, but no one dared speak of it. No one wanted to see the Emperor bleed. This is not the story of a failure. This is the story of a legend who had the world in his hands, but never the crown on his head. Karl-Heinz Rummenigge was born in 1955, just a decade after the Second World War left Germany divided and disillusioned. He captained his country, wore the number 11 shirt with pride, and was looked upon as the man who would lead the manshaft to repeat the glory of '74. But that's where the mythology begins to crack. In 1982, Germany made it to the World Cup final, but not without controversy. Rummenigge was injured. His thigh was torn. There were whispers he should have stayed on the bench. Instead, he played. Some say he was injected with painkillers. Some say he played more on reputation than reality. He scored in the semi-final against France with a back heel that oozed instinct, but in the final, he wasn't the warrior like Matthias, nor the clinical killer like Gerd Muller. He was different, and for many fans and pundits at the time, different didn't win matches. They needed a bulldozer, not a ballet dancer. He left Bayern in 1984 and moved to Inter Milan for a record fee. Italy was a league of defense, and Rummenigge found himself shackled. Injuries mounted. The magic flickered, but never burned bright again. From a two-time Ballon d'Or to a man struggling to stay on the pitch, his fall wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, slow, almost respectful, but still a fall. Yet, even as his boots grew heavier, the media never gave him peace. Why can't Rummenigge deliver when it matters? They asked. Is he a leader or a luxury? The pressure was constant. The expectations, crushing. Behind the curtains of his legendary resume was a truth slowly taking shape. Karl-Heinz Rummenigge wasn't just fighting opponents. He was fighting a script written for him. A destiny carved in silver, not gold. Learning how to read defenders like open books. By the late 1970s, he was no longer in anyone's shadow. He was the spotlight. In 1979, with Muller gone and Beckenbauer departed for the NASL, then came the 1986 World Cup, his last chance. Again, he wasn't fully fit. Again, he scored in the final. Again, Germany lost, this time to Diego Maradona. 3 finals in 4 years. 3 heartbreaks. The press turned colder. Always the silver, never the gold, they sneered. Behind closed doors, Rummenigge was exhausted. Not just by pain, but by perception. His career, filled with brilliance, was being rewritten by failures he never controlled. He wasn't a villain. He wasn't a hero. He was trapped in between. By 1987, at just 31, he faded into retirement. No grand farewell, no triumphant lap, just silence. His name, once roared in Olympic stadiums and San Siro, now slipped quietly into the archives. But even in that silence, there were rumors. But suspiciously delicate in the eyes of a nation that still equated softness with weakness. In locker rooms, teammates respected him, but some kept distance. There were whispers he was too handsome, too polished, too clean. He's not one of us, some murmured behind closed doors. not out of disdain, but out of discomfort. He didn't drink like the others. He didn't party. He didn't need to. He went home, often alone, his only addiction the relentless expectation to be perfect. There are credible accounts from Bayern's medical staff that during the 1982 and 1986 World Cups, Rummenigge received cortisone injections directly into his thighs before matches, sometimes 2 per game. The pain didn't go away. It simply became manageable, but the cost was permanent. He looked like a man waiting for something that would never come. One said, the most painful truth, despite all his success, Rummenigge never felt part of football's inner mythology. He was a man with medals, but without myth. When Germany finally won the World Cup again in 1990, under the leadership of Matthias, grittier, meaner, and more German in character, Rummenigge was barely mentioned. His story was already fading. No tribute, no retrospecti. It was as if he had been a stepping stone, not a cornerstone. Didn't initially offer him a role in the organization. He had to wait, quietly, for years, until later, when his executive skills earned respect far from the pitch. But the player Rummenigge, the boy with ballet feet and steel will, never got the closure he deserved. No golden farewell, no outpouring of gratitude. Just a name on a list, a picture in a hallway. It's easy to remember the ones who lifted trophies, to enshrine the winners in bronze and marble, to etch their names on stadium walls and football folklore. But what about those who stood just behind the crown, who bled, who led, who shone, yet were never allowed to stand on that final step? Karl-Heinz Rummenigge is football's most elegant tragedy. A player whose talent was unquestionable, whose leadership was undeniable, and whose consistency bordered on mechanical, but who was cursed with timing, circumstance, and a cruel kind of perfectionism that never quite found its reward. This channel believes that Rummenigge wasn't simply a nearly man. He was a victim of an era that demanded brutality over beauty. In another time, perhaps today, he might have been cherished more deeply. In a media landscape obsessed with image and style, his grace would have been sold like perfume. His quiet strength would have inspired documentaries. His pain would have had room to breathe. But back then, the German striker was expected to crush, not caress, to scream, not glide. And so we ask, was Karl-Heinz Rummenigge a wasted genius, or simply too graceful for the game he played? Did football fail him by choosing power over poise? Or was he always meant to be an almost, a man who came just close enough to remind us how fragile greatness can be? He didn't self-destruct like some of his peers. There was no scandal, no addiction, no disgrace. But maybe that's why his story slips through the cracks. There's no chaos to cling to, just quiet pain, quiet glory, quiet goodbye. We talk a lot about football gods, about Maradona, Platini, Ronaldo, Zidane. But Karl-Heinz Rummenigge? He was never a god. He was a man. And maybe that's why we forgot him. Because mortals don't belong in legend. And yet, somehow, he still does. There's a certain kind of silence that lingers after the final whistle. A silence not of defeat, but of something unresolved. That's the silence Karl-Heinz Rummenigge left behind. He's not the face you see when World Cup montages roll. He's not the name sung by ultras or tattooed on backs. His goals don't flood your social media timeline. And yet, when you watch his tapes, something tugs at you, something achingly pure. You realize you're witnessing a player who didn't chase glory for the noise, but for the love of the game itself. In an age of giants and wild rebels, Bayern Munich would finally bring him back, not as a player, but as a leader. He helped steer the club through the modern era, shaping its legacy off the pitch the way he once shaped it on it. But by then, the player had become a memory, and memories fade unless you choose to remember them. Today, we do. We remember the back heel against France, the burst of pace through Italian defenses, the thigh wrapped in tape, the eyes staring into a World Cup night sky, searching for a crown that never came. Karl-Heinz Rummenigge never needed gold to be great.